right. What's up, everyone? So I'm actually here with my friend Stephanie, and I actually want to give Stephanie the opportunity to introduce herself, and then I'll probably fill in whatever holes and the stuff that we're going to be getting into today.
Okay, so my name is Stephanie, as Denzel said. I not too long ago discovered that I'm an ENFJ, type 5 in the Enneagram, sexual 5. And Denzel and I met last year at a personality hacker meetup.
You guys really helped. I hate this place. Thank you. Alright, so we're helping another video.
There you go. Denzel is documenting for us.
Someone's filming. Someone's doing it. Everybody out? All right.
Okay.
I appreciate everybody's patience. And I apologize for... No apologies.
I love holidays. You guys like it kind of So we're actually so it's kind of I really like it. There's still
And at that meetup, we had been casually talking about my confusion or indecision between the INFJ and the INFP type. So for many years, I thought I was an INFP because that's always what I got in the test. And at that point in my life, I related to the description. But in the last few years, I noticed that I actually use some other cognitive functions. And then I reached out to him some months later, and we got to talking, and turned out that I was an ENFJ, which is the last thing I thought I would be. But the more that I learned about it and talked about it with him, the more it resonated. And then later on, learning about the Enneagram 5, sexual 5 piece just made everything make so much sense.
Yeah. And you had never looked into ENFJ before either, right?
No, I always thought I was an introvert from when I was young, except when I was a kid. As a child, I was a lot more, but I always kind of assumed that my mom kind of exaggerated, even though in videotapes, like, you can clearly tell I'm loving the action and super loud.
Yeah.
But I also had quiet moments. So
of course. Yeah. And it was just really interesting because, I mean, I personally assumed Stephanie to be an introvert as well when I met her at the live event. If you go over to Personality Hackers Instagram, you can even see like the highlight for that day. And it like there's a picture where they put like, they said something like, "Thanks everyone for coming out to this live event or this meetup, including the introverts," and you see like Stephanie there. So it's like, yeah, nobody really like doubted, oh yeah, we could see INFJ, INFP, we just don't really know which one. And then I sat down, I was profiling her, and I always tell Stephanie too, like, not in like a mean way or anything, but like, I'm nice to all of my clients, of course, and it's not like a fake nice. Like, there's a level of care that I have for every client that I have. So when Stephanie reached out for the profiling session and all of that, then I had my, of course, base level of like care and happiness. It wasn't like, all right, let's get this over with. Like, I was genuinely like interested, and like, all right, we're gonna profile you. And I wasn't just focused on INFJ, INFP. I was trying to figure out like, okay, which out of all 16, which a good profiler should do, is Stephanie, and then really like make sure I got all of that down and try to prove myself wrong. So until I'm like positive, like, yeah, this is the type that I believe that Stephanie is. And then we go over it at the end, all of that. So I really thought that it was just going to be like, another profiling session, like casual or whatever. And Stephanie, like from the moment that I asked the flow question, like really caught my attention. Like, whoa, like that, these are a lot of unexpected answers. it's like, yeah, and her energy was different too, from what, one would like even think like from an introvert, like casually, like usually. And so it's like, okay, this is interesting. And the longer that we talk, I think that profiling session was probably like maybe almost 2 hours. Then it was like, yo, I like this is all pointing toward this type. And I told her, like, you're not an INFJ or an INFP, you're an ENFJ. She's like, what? Start explaining, and I started like asking, does this resonate with you? She's like, oh my gosh. So this is really cool. Then we've been talking about that, like, for months, including later on when we found out that she was a Sx5 in the Enneagram, which makes so much sense as well. I feel like that's a very rare combination, ENFJ plus 5. Although, of course, if you're going to be an ENFJ in the 5, then sexual 5 makes the most sense, especially because you said something like the regular 5 was like too cerebral for you, but then like the 9 was also like something else. Like we looked at all the different Enneagram types and it was like something like that, right?
Yeah, the 5, just the general 5 description felt very very introverted, which I could relate to at certain points in my life, but also very like cold in a way, and yes, very cerebral, which I can be, but I also have a very sensitive and emotional, like I do really want to connect with people, but again, it's more one-on-one, like developing that intimacy with one or max 2 people at a time, at least in a single setting. And then I also do have moments where I don't want to talk to anyone, so I can totally relate to the 5. Like I'm not in the mood. Like there's a part of me that might want, but it's not the right timing, or I'm stuck in thoughts or something. Like I'm really up there in my head, and then other that can be very, like someone can just tell me something and I'll really feel it and I'll get like teary-eyed or something.
Yeah.
It's like you're a walking contradiction almost.
Yes, that's pretty much exactly what you are. But it's really cool too. That's what makes you like all the more like fascinating. And like I said, that whole profiling session was just really awesome. Like immediately after the profiling session, then I was like, yeah, all right. So now, like after that, this is done. Now that this is all done and we've really solidified your type and really resonate with it and everything. Especially like with the INFJ, ENFJ differences, like looking at tertiary SE versus tertiary TI and all of that. I was like, yeah, no INFJ is talking about SE the way that you are. It's like this makes sense. But like after all of that, then I was like, yeah, we should be friends. And during our session, a lot of things that Stephanie was like pointing towards was like, interestingly, a ton of things that like I myself had like already been like pondering, like thinking about, whatever, and working through. And so I was like, yeah, well, we should definitely be friends, and we should like continue to discuss some of these things, like, off of the profiling session and stuff like that. And then so it's been a few months now. Like I kind of lost track of time. I want to say like almost 4 months, but maybe that's a stretch. I'm not sure.
I think it started in May, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe.
So it feels like longer though.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, we've like talked like every day since then, really diving deep. And the reason why I wanted to do this video with Stephanie is because we've been practicing something that I personally have never practiced or had like the type of friendship, like, where both people are capable of such a strong ability and dedication to doing exactly what we're going to be talking about in this video, which we pretty much called, we're still looking for the name, maybe by the time that this is posted, but it's like we've had like Soulship engineering and like, like a whole bunch of that other stuff. But before that, there's 2 clips that I want to show that some of you may have already seen if you guys, have already checked out my channel and everything. A while back, there is a woman on YouTube called Carolyn Zykowski. She made a video referring to the ENFJ and INFJ types. And in this video, she talks about something called the ENFJ emotional pivot that when I watched it, it immediately resonated years ago. And I was like, crap, like this is so true. Like she's really calling us out. So I'm gonna let that roll real quick.
ENFJs have like not only a natural tolerance for that, but they love that. Like they love people, they are drawn to people who are emotionally complicated, and who are puzzles. And they're drawn to trying to help people like that. That's like their natural gift. They want to be cheerleaders. They want to help. Almost they can be self-help guru type personalities sometimes, of seeing that depth in somebody and trying to caretake it, trying to bring it out and honor it. INFJs, for their part, they're one of the only types, I think, who really can genuinely see through the ENFJ's other-centered driver process and actually reach out to them and encourage them to be self-caring, encourage them to be vulnerable. It's almost like the INFJ can act towards the ENFJ how the ENFJ acts towards others constantly. It's like the INFJ is the ENFJ's own little ENFJ. I've had a number of experiences with ENFJs where they said that an INFJ did this for them. I have at least one close friend who's an ENFJ who has told me as an INFJ that I'm one of the only people she tells her secrets to, that who knows the real her. I have a suspicion that there are a lot of INFJ, ENFJ friendships like this. I see ENFJs as so emotionally brilliant, as so good at seeing these matrix-like long-range visions of how harmony is going to be created in a society. And one of their little, maybe it's an Achilles heel, maybe it's a curse that goes along with this gift, but there's something that they do, which I don't think they realize that other people notice it sometimes, that maybe INFJs notice it, is that they are so quick to emotionally pivot away from themselves. For example, in a group situation, often INFJs find themselves in roles of being like a psychological leader. They might be in a situation where they're presenting, or they're facilitating, or they're teaching, or they just naturally find themselves helping a group, or maybe they're activists. And they'll be sort of in a leadership role trying to implement these genius harmony systems. And someone in the room, maybe it's an INFJ, will sort of try to get them to talk about their own experience and their own feelings. And they'll try to get them to talk about it in a way that's authentic, in a way that's not planned, in a way that is raw and messy and vulnerable. And the ENFJ will so quickly pivot away from it. They have this way of suddenly they have a little turn, and it's like they're throwing the energy back out, and all of a sudden we're talking about everybody else again. One more moment, one more opportunity for the ENFJ to talk about their own messy experience has passed, and suddenly we're not talking about the ENFJ. They want other people to be really vulnerable. They're like cheerleaders for other people, for a they are architects of containers for other people to be vulnerable, to be messy, to be these like beautiful, tender humans. And they'll ask that of other people, and they won't do it themselves. And I think that sometimes they think others don't notice that.
Right. So naturally, after I watched that video, I had some time to think about it. I had some time like really like ponder that and talk to a few other people about it and everything. And I ended up making a response to that video. And my response, the full video of my response can be found on my channel. It's called Nuanced Nudity. But essentially, here's a clip encapsulating the whole message of that video. A friend of mine once talked about on a page, she said that she pretty much doesn't like how ENFJs can often be very reserved and very like private and like they hide from being authentic and expressing, you know, like certain types of like vulnerabilities. And why can't we just not care what society will think of us and just be like real and honest and be like, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. Hey, this is that. And we had a discussion that day. This was like a few months ago. And I explained to her, like, look, honestly, I try to do that. Like, I've gotten way better with that. I would like to think that I'm very vulnerable on my YouTube channel and everything. Not as vulnerable as I am with those who are very close to me, but, you know, pretty vulnerable. You guys can usually get the idea of what types of things that I'm going through if you really pay attention to the things that I'm saying. But I'm not as, like, raw with it because, let's just be honest, your nudity can either arouse people or it can disgust people. The same nudity that can once again arouse someone can also disgust someone. So I feel like to be truly authentic with certain people, you have to be able to gauge who your audience is. You have to be able to know how they're going to receive it. Because the same type of information, the same type of vulnerability that you express to one person where they'd be able to handle it and be able to relate to it and be able to learn from it is the same type of vulnerability that if you do it to another person, then they'll take that information and they'll be like, and they'll start thinking certain things of you and they'll go and spread gossip or, you know, now they won't even trust certain advice that you give them. And it's like, wow, I'm still the same person that I was before I told you that, but because I told you this information, now all of a sudden you can't trust me or, you know, things like that. So it's understandable why we as ENFJs and those of you, those others of you who are afraid to be vulnerable with other people are usually not really as vulnerable with other people. When you decide to be vulnerable with people, be careful who you decide to be vulnerable with. So, Nuanced Nudity, as you guys now know, based off of that clip, was a response video to what Carolyn Zykowski had said. And essentially, as you guys can see, we, as ENFJs, and probably almost anyone else, it's like ENFJs are known for trying to get everybody else to like open up emotionally and everything. But we, as Carolyn said, have a hard time doing that for other people. And in my video, like I said, I believe that the reason why is because, again, the same naked body that may arouse other people, some people, is the same naked body that may disgust other people. I, of course, can't speak for all ENFJs, but I'd like to believe that the reason why it's so easy for us to be able to get everybody else to figuratively strip in a way is because we can always guarantee to other people that, hey, your naked body is not going to disgust me. In fact, I'm going to find it like a beautiful piece of art. It's going to make you more human, all of that. Like, we are going to embrace it, you know? But when we do the same back, we can't always get that guarantee back that, you know, someone's going to reciprocate that in the same way. And so, of course, if you know that you can deliver on your end that type of guarantee, like, okay, yeah, this is not going to be like, I'm not going to judge you for this. I'm going to embrace you even more in this regard, whatever. But you don't know how they're going to respond on your end. And you've probably even like taken off just a few layers of clothing, and you've seen the way that people looked at you, even sometimes unexpectedly. Of course, eventually you're going to learn like to hide yourself away and like even put on extra layers of clothes until you meet someone who's happily able to like share that vulnerability. But without that vulnerability, without that level of intimacy, then without that level of vulnerability, you can't build that level of intimacy. And so the cool thing about me and Stephanie was that we both kind of came into this friendship with a very strong, solid mindset of, hey, we are willing to figuratively like become like naked with each other and like share all of like, the raw, deepest, darkest secrets, whatever. And we can guarantee the other person like, hey, no matter how dark, no matter how whatever, like, I will share this with you because I want to be vulnerable with you. I want to foster a friendship where we can have this kind of back and forth, and it'll just expound into something like amazingly beautiful. And I'm trusting you in this regard. And ever since then, like, it wasn't like, oh, I trusted Stephanie like right away from the jump. I definitely like gave her a few little like, well, let me just show this. Okay, you didn't really budge over there. Okay, how about I show you a little bit of this? Okay, you're still, and it was like a little bit of the same thing from her end too. But after some time, it got to a point where like even one of the exercises that we did, so like we have this thing called learning to be comfortably uncomfortable with each other, which is whenever we have something in our heads that we're like, oh man, this is so embarrassing to share. It's like, nope, you have to share it now. Because it's essentially training you to be like, wow, I guess that wasn't so bad, because we have like a nonchalant kind of like dynamic with each other. And it even then grew to a point where like we had 2 different days scheduled, to where one day Stephanie like, sat down, like we were on the phone, we planned it, and she shared like all of her deepest, darkest parts of herself and like secrets of herself and everything with me, which was crazy. Like she actually decided to go first. I was like, whoa, and she just went list by list by list, and we discussed all of them. And as we were discussing, there was no like disgust that came from my end, at least, not that I demonstrated like, yeah, cool. Yeah, I was like, in fact, if anything, I told her like, yo, this actually makes me like not only trust you more with whatever I can show you, but like it's really cool to have someone who, there's always like people who like can relate to you, and they're like, or they can even understand you. Like there's the types of people like, who they won't judge you or anything, but they themselves have not done like half of the things. So then you just feel like a demon next to this angel who, thankfully, I'm glad that this angel is not like judging me, sure. But it's kind of nice. It might be a bad analogy, but it's kind of nice to be like, oh, I'm not the only quote unquote demon around here that's trying to get back his wings in some way. And so with Stephanie, like that's been a really cool dynamic. Because then, the next day or two, we did the first call Tuesday, and then the next one was on a Thursday. I shared all the parts of myself. And I had like listed all these things I've like never even told anyone else before, kind of thing. And really just like poured all of that out. And Stephanie embraced all of that in the same way. And like, we really were like, yo, that's crazy. Like all of this is centered around this and that. And we like really psychoanalyze it. And it's grown into a friendship where we are psychoanalyzing our dynamic with each other so well that in fostering this very deep intimacy and vulnerability with each other, we're kind of like, I see it as like, I think of Aladdin, where, at the very beginning, like Aladdin and his monkey or whatever, like many people have needed to like enter this cave, and nobody was able to do it. But finally they were capable of getting in there, getting the rich, getting the what's it called? genie lamp and then like getting out. It's like nobody else has been able to go in there and like get out. So in the same sense, like Stephanie and I have like actually had the capacity, the ability to be able to go into the deep, dark, murky caves of vulnerability, so that we can find all the gold treasures of intimacy and everything, and then bring them back out so that now we can share with you guys in this video. So this is a very lengthy intro and everything that I just wanted to really like lay out for everyone. But from here, we're just gonna like freeform discuss a lot of the things that we've been exploring in our dynamic that might be able to help you guys. So that was a lot, Stephanie, but do you have anything to add on to that right now?
Yeah, maybe a couple of things. I think, so from my profiling session, something that I had brought up to you that I guess gave me away as an ENFJ, and that we talked about too in the beginnings of our conversation as friends, is that like I've always had that desire to do that nudity thing, and not so much for me to share myself fully first, but to just create an environment where both people can do that when they feel comfortable, and preferably pretty frequently. But it was always so hard to get people to open up, or they would open up to a certain level and then like we would hit a wall. And yeah, and I wouldn't always feel comfortable either, because for many reasons, right? Like being an ENFJ, period, it's like I'll tend to keep things that I share about myself very vague, or I will do emotional pivot. Like I'll say something brief and then possibly change the subject, or like slightly. But if I kind of have to, it'll just be very vague. And it's been very, very rare that I found a friendship or any type of human relationship where I feel like I can express pretty much anything. But one of the reasons why I think it's so easy with us is like we never really discussed it. It's just our MO. It's just how we operate. Like I think we both came into it having that acceptance and that desire to connect in that way. And like I was saying, having that acceptance that no matter what the other person shares, like that's sacred to you, and like you're gonna love them for it anyway. So we never really talked about it like, oh, you can share this with me, like I won't.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that. It was just like we understood that about each other, and little by little, like Denzel said, it wasn't like we just poured out our guts to each other in the beginning. It was gradual, but like through previous interactions you could see like, okay, this person's pretty open-minded, like pretty close to me in open-mindedness, and just discovering more and more that we were on the same page as far as sharing anything. And I remember when we had that conversation to share like the really dark stuff, that was kind of scary for me, because even though I knew you would be accepting and cool with it and everything, like I knew it would be okay, it was still scary because I think most, if not all of them, I hadn't told anyone else. And like there's also the sense of shame that you feel around certain things that you keep, that's why we call them dark things. But yeah, you feel like the sense of shame, but it's so liberating to be able to share it with someone that, like you said, they know what it's like to have whether it's a past or like something in your present that's dark, it doesn't matter, but it's just a different experience when the other person can relate on that level, like, oh yeah, I've done certain things too, and not only help you feel normal and like kind of cast aside some of that shame, but also something that I think is really beautiful is that we've been able to see like the full spectrum of human, I guess, behaviors, actions, emotions. Like you get to see someone in their full humanity, which is extraordinary. That's not something you get to see every day, right? Most people walk around living with this mask, like pretending they don't have a dark side. But we all know that's not true.
Right.
It's just, they choose not to, including us. We choose not to go there. But it's so beautiful when you get to share that and like, and almost see yourself through the other person's eyes, right? Like I know that when I was sharing those things, you were seeing it like, wow, like you have this past, but like you're still a really genuine person. And like I felt the same when you were telling me those things, like, okay, you did all these things, but like, not to downplay, I guess, but like they're not that bad, at least in my eyes. Like human, it just happens. And then the cool thing as well is like knowing those things about you, but also knowing that like you're this person, like I was saying, a genuine person that like you really want to keep striving to become a better person, and like you recognize that maybe those things weren't the best way to handle a situation, but we're human and we make mistakes, yet you want to continue striving to be better. Like that's just like, wow. Like it's so inspiring and beautiful. And I think if more people, it's hard, but if more people were not to share, because I honestly believe people do want to share, like especially in the times we're living in. I think people want to express certain things. It's just we don't have that space or that container, because most people, again, they react negatively to seeing a naked body. Like even though they're secretly fascinated with it, their first reaction is like, oh, I'm not supposed to. And so I think that creates a lot of shame and just aversion to wanting to even try to go there for a lot of people. So I think it's really important that we try to create a place where people can either be themselves, like truly be themselves, or if something's on their heart or on their mind that's weighing heavily, like for them to feel comfortable sharing that with us. So I think that's another reason why I love our dynamic, is because like we're not only trying to do this with one another, but like we want to get better within ourselves so that we can bring it out into our immediate circles and a larger community, and just foster this place where people can feel comfortable expressing. And I think at least the goal is that if I can create that space for someone, then they can be inspired and say, whoa, like she held space for me. She didn't put up a wall. She didn't call me this name or the other. She didn't say I was ugly or disgusting. Like maybe I can be that way. You know, like it might spark something in them to be a little bit less judgmental when somebody comes to them. So hopefully we can have this really lovely ripple effect.
Yeah, for sure. A few thoughts even like struck me like as you were talking, like the idea of like sharing this darkness and stuff like that. It's like we do in a way like want to, and there is shame behind it, because like even like with mine, like I know like the fact that I was saying it out loud, that's what was like as I'm saying, like, what the heck are you doing, Denzel? You know, like, because a lot of these things is kind of like, it's kind of like you've hidden them in your dungeon, and it's just like I know that they exist, but I'm trying to forget that they exist, or they're still not really like real to me. And so then the moment you start saying it out loud, then that's when all of a sudden it starts like becoming like real, and it's like, and then you just all of a sudden start looking at yourself, it's like, wow, I'm a horrible person. Like this is like, oh my gosh, this is so bad. And you start sharing like all these other things, and like Stephanie, like the fact that you're like, like, you know, like, well, that's not like that bad, which is funny because like I felt the same way like with yours. Like like when you were sharing yours, like I think I was like laughing most of the time, not in like a mocking way, but it was like, yo, I can totally see why that happened. And it's like, and I told her straight up, I was like, I mean, I'm not here trying to encourage this. I'm not going to give you like, hey, high five for these things. Like we acknowledge like, okay, yeah, those weren't the best decisions. You know, people ended up getting hurt, whatever. In my situation, it's the same thing too. But at the end of the day, like Stephanie said, it's like, I know that your core, like who you are, even despite like the mistakes that you've made, like I believe that at your core, it's a constant state of amelioration, which you're trying to like improve. You want to become better. You've made mistakes as a human does. And now it's like, yeah, I owned up to that. I admit these were wrong things. They weren't even mistakes. A lot of them were like intentionally done. And I was aware of what I was doing. Same on this end. And I own up to that too. But I'm going to continue to try and like get better and better. And just putting these things out there in the light and having someone like embracing like, yo, like I've been there too several times. And yeah, like, you know, I'm walking right there with you. That's so affirming, you know, so that was like really helpful for me. And then I really love, like you said, especially about our dynamic, that we've always made it like a really like FE Dom kind of goal. It's like, hey, like, especially like with Stephanie, like, although she's like sexual dominant and, you know, like, so thrives more like one-on-one, she's made it a point over and over, like, I want this to be more than like so much bigger than just us two. Like this video that we're doing right now, like it's not just like, oh, you know, me and her have this like dynamics, like, wow, look at all of this gold that we're finding from exploring these deep parts of a relationship or friendship that most people, like a vast majority of people, are unable to find. Well, we're going to keep all these riches to ourselves. Stephanie and I have like made it like a really big thing where it's like everything that all of the riches that we find, we want to like bring it back out to those who aren't able to go as deep, you know, and then we can teach them how to navigate through these waters of, you know, like getting to that vulnerable side and everything like that. And like fostering that in other friendships and dynamics. Stephanie actually shared this dude's videos with me. I really like them. Clay Arnall, I don't really know exactly how to say it, but he has some really cool videos. Like I've been checking out a lot of them. One of the most recent ones that I checked out was the 5 pillars of a relationship, which is coincidentally similar to a video that me and Kylisa did a few years ago on the 5 aspects of a healthy relationship, whether platonic or romantic. But his was still like really good. And like, you know, the 5 ones that he had were like emotional intimacy, intellectual intimacy, physical/sexual intimacy, shared values, and then quality time/shared interests. And then he goes into like, you know, like what may be important for a romantic dynamic and then what would be like important for just like a really healthy dynamic, like a friendship dynamic, like all around. And I thought it was really cool. Like as I was watching that, like when I was like watching, I was like, wow, like me and Stephanie, like we really have like all of the key aspects of a very healthy, platonically deep dynamic. And it's just like really like awesome that we have that kind of like freedom. I think also, especially again, like being like FE dominance, like we have this language where we talk about like social etiquette and stuff. And like, we just kind of like understand how conversation works, how relationships work, like, you know, and that naturally relationships tend to dwindle. Like, you know, the fire tends to like go lower and lower. It's almost like a romantic relationship as well, where it's like, you know, sure, you might have like the honeymoon phase and then everyone's like, oh wow, like you know, I love you so much, and then things naturally start to like dwindle. But one of the biggest things that we found in like a lot of friendships and stuff is that once those flames start to dwindle, a lot of people don't know how to find more firewood to throw into that flame. Either they don't know how to find the firewood, or they're too lazy to find it, or they don't even think that the flame is worth saving. which is, you know, it's sad when it comes down to that, but it's like at the end of the day, like that's what it is. But for those who like don't know how to find that firewood, or aren't even able to like they just see the flame going down, they're like, oh shoot, what's going on here? Or they're just like, oh well, you know, dang, that's just like what happens. But they don't know that, oh wait, I can help this. Some of them may not even be in tune with the fire, like, oh, it looks fine to me, like in it's like, no, like 3 months ago it was way bigger, you know. But with the types of people that me and Stephanie are, which I think is very uncommon, we keep such a good pulse on that fire. And we do this with our individual dynamics with like other people. Stephanie has other friends, I have other friends. And we keep an eye on that fire, and we try to add firewood to those. But in a lot of those dynamics, we have found for each other that we tend to be the person who notices that flame dwindling more first. And we tend to be the one to like, you know, and it's not one of those like instances where we want to like talk about like, oh, woe is me. You know, I'm always the one who's given and like complaining and stuff like that. But it just happens to be the case that a lot of times like we were the ones who like, oh, I'm gonna go get more firewood. It's like, then eventually you start thinking like, does this other person really even want this fire to keep on going? Like, why, if our relationship is like a child, like a baby, then why am I always the one who's going to get the food and feeding it and everything? And you're just kind of like benefiting off of like being the parent, but you're not really like actually helping change the diapers and doing all of that. So it was really cool, again, going off of this metaphor with the child or the fire, to now meet two good parents, if you will, where it's like, I do my share of like paying attention to whenever the baby's crying. It's like, oh shoot, this relationship, this baby, this fire needs more firewood. This baby needs more like food or attention. And at the moment that, you know, we sense that even in the slightest bit, then we both are like our attention is grabbed, and we both individually like go to like try to like help it. So in a sense, it's like the perfect parenting of a relationship that I've seen that we're doing. And it's really interesting for me. It's like really cool because it's so easy and like seamless and just natural, kind of like what Stephanie was saying, like nothing is forced. We just had this like understanding of like, no, this is how relationships are. And it's cool that we both understand this social etiquette enough to be able to invest that much into the relationships. And so now it's like none of us on our end, on either end, is like, why am I always the one getting the firewood for this flame? You know, like I feel like I would never feel that way about Stephanie, and I'd like to think that she would never feel that way about me. And we just naturally bring our share of firewood like every day. We just naturally do our share of co-parenting for this child, our relationship, like every day. And I think that that's a huge thing that's missing in so many platonic and romantic relationships. You know, like one partner is like, you know, and a lot of times we tend to think like we have this victim complex, like, well, I'm always doing this, I'm always doing that. And then your other partner is thinking the exact same thing, like, well, I'm the one who's always doing this. And it's like, one of you guys are lying. You guys can't both be always the one doing that. Because if you were always the one doing it, your fire would not be dwindling. Your child would not be starving, you know? And so in the same sense, like, you know, you really have to like communicate and like see like, hey, what, like, you know, like, how can I be helping in this dynamic? You know, like, what does our fire need? Like, you know, stuff like that. So I really appreciate that as well, like in me and Stephanie's dynamic. And I think that, again, like that's a big thing that I wanted to point out in this video that I feel like a lot of people need to learn how to do. Did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, something I was thinking about while you were talking, or a thought that came up was, I think it also, you have to be aware of the other person's love language, because people saying, oh, but I'm putting all this energy, and the other one saying the same thing. But if we go back to the baby analogy, if Denzel's feeding the baby, changing diapers, and putting him or her to sleep, and I'm over there like folding the baby's clothes and doing laundry, it may not look like I'm directly contributing to the baby's well-being, the baby being the relationship's well-being, but like I am doing something that's important. It's just not directly benefiting the baby in that, you know, in that moment.
Right.
It's something that needs to be done, you know. So I think that has to be taken into account, and not to completely change your love language, but also contribute in a way that does directly contribute to the development of the baby or the growth or the well-being, so that both people can benefit from that.
Yeah.
And another thing as well that I was thinking is that in our dynamic, like you were saying, it's an unspoken thing. Like we just both know that we want to constantly be throwing logs in there. But there have been a couple moments where like life happens and you're really busy with something, or I'm really busy doing something, and like there might be a day or two where there's a little bit more of a lull, and also know that's okay and that's normal.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens because again, whether you're in a platonic friendship relationship or in a romantic relationship, whatever the case may be, you're still two individuals, and hopefully you have a life outside of your
Right.
friendship or your partnership, and you have to tend to that too. But again, not losing sight of like, oh, I still have to, not that it's work, but I think that's something Clay touched on in his video, or one of his videos, that people think relationships, at least romantic ones, or maybe friendships as well, are like hard work.
Yeah.
That's what it
This
is.
is in his most recent one.
Yeah, I don't see it that way. I see it more like it's a devotion or a dedication, something you want to dedicate and devote your time to. It's not work like, I have to do this because Denzel expects me to. It's like, oh, I want to do this because I know it's going to benefit him, it's going to benefit me, it's going to make our connection stronger for the future, for whatever the case may be. It's going to build on what we already have. And so, yeah, there have been moments where there's a little lull or something, but you have to be aware that that happens, and like you can't keep pushing it off to the side or saying like, oh, well, yeah, that's just how it is, or like that's the new thing now. Because once you accept it as the new thing, like then the other person's gonna accept it as the new normal, and then yeah, that's how you end up with a fire that's like about to go out.
Right.
And I think that happens often. Like people just, like you said, you had a huge bonfire once upon a time, and little by little it's been dwindling, and like you don't even really notice it until it's almost out.
Yeah. And
So
then by then you feel like it's too late to even like add on to that fire. You don't even think that's possible to bring it back up.
Yeah, I think there can come a point if too much time has passed and it's been such a weak flame that it can, like I would like to think that you can always pick it back up, but you really have to both be willing to renew that devotion and like, you know, put in the time and energy. But with us, like somebody always jumps back on it.
Yeah.
Like once one person initiates, the other one's like, okay, yeah, like you jump right in, throwing twigs, logs, sand, whatever, going. So I think that's just how we are. But something that you and I have talked about in the past as well that I think is interesting is also knowing like when to pull away
Yeah.
and stop throwing logs in, and when to like keep going, you know, because friendship or a relationship of any sort is a two-person dance, right? Like you have your bonfire and you're dancing around it, but one person is throwing logs in and dancing, like, and you keep inviting them to come and join you to help you fan the flames, but like they might pretend like they will, or like you can tell their heart's not fully in it.
Yes.
Where you have to just accept that. And so I think as a 9, as a social 9 and as a sexual 5, or just as a 9 and a 5, I don't know, we've had slightly different approaches and we've kind of been from each other. So that's been cool. I don't know if you want to talk more about that, but
yeah, I think that like, well, number one, like you said, it's so important to like really emphasize how like that natural dwindle of the flame is natural. Like that's going to happen in a friendship, in a relationship, in whichever. And so once it starts to dwindle, like, you know, like that's not in no way an indication in itself that you two are bad friends or you two are bad co-parents of this relationship child. But when you start having, you know, like maybe like one person in that dynamic, you know, like what Stephanie was saying, like for me and her, like sure, there's been like times where it like seemed to like lull a little bit because life happens and that's natural. But because we're so attuned to that, and we like, I never have any doubt that Stephanie actually wants to throw firewood into this. Like I can see her energy, I can see her excitement, I can see the amount of affirmation that she gives into, I really enjoy this friendship, I really enjoy this dynamic, I'm really like benefiting off of this, and everything that I'm doing to like on my end to keep this flame burning is coming from my heart. Like I really enjoy this. It's not work for me, it's not hard. It's I want this. And that is so affirming for me, especially as a 9, because I think that for me, being an FE Dom and a 9, a social 9 at that. So social 9s are like constantly like known as like the 9s who like would just shrink themselves so much and just do so much for like, you know, the people that they love and, you know, like the group that they may be involved in and everything, to the point where it's like all of their desires, all of their needs, like they don't even become like aware of it. And I have this like natural proclivity to assume that other people just aren't as interested in my dynamic with them as I am in our dynamic. And it is work for them to like, oh man, you know, like, dang, you know, that flame was dwindling again. Like, I hear, you know, like, and they just like throw in some firewood or whatever. And so like, not only do I feel like I'm like, I have to put in more, especially in the past, like growing up and everything, there's been so many relationships, like platonic ones, but yeah, the romantic ones as well. I kind of felt this way, but mainly like with the platonic ones, where I felt like I was putting in so much. A lot of times I believe it was because they weren't aware that the flame was dwindling. And then there was also times where it's like, I feel like maybe they weren't aware because they didn't care enough about it. And then when they did become aware of it, then they're like, man, that's just a lot of work. You know, like this is just too much. And so, and I feel like if you have a friend like that, who's making it seem like, sheesh, yeah, this is just a lot of work. Like, I'm gonna just be honest. Like if Stephanie made me feel that way, the past me would have still put in so much effort. Like, you know, well, this is all that I have to keep me warm. So I have to just do her end, like, and I have to pull her weight too, so I can keep this warm for the both of us kind of thing. But nowadays, like, especially like I said, like a lot of you have been keeping up with my channel and everything. I posted my 5 tips for the new year. And one of my tips that I said is like one of the New Year's resolutions that I had was that I'm going to invest my energy very particularly this year. Like over the past few years, I've been trying to like really hone in on that. But like this year especially, I made it like a thing. Like I'm going to view myself as a limited source of water, and I'm going to have a specific garden that I'm trying to tailor of my intimates, and then I'm going to have like layers and outskirts. But I will not water plants that will not immediately produce fruit for me that'll benefit me and give me that energy, that reciprocation. I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to only give excess energy to outer skirt plants, but I'm going to focus on my intimate garden. And so because I have that mindset, it's like I'm only investing energy nowadays, this year especially, into the dynamics that I believe the other person is actually willing to throw in their firewood as well. And they're like excited about it. They want to keep this fire burning. If I see that they're like kind of like lulling, they're like, oh, I don't really mind if this fire like, dwindles a little bit. I too will be like, okay, well, I have a whole bunch of firewood here. I'm gonna throw it in that fire instead, and ours can dwindle a little bit. I will still come by whenever I have some excess firewood because I've checked on all of my most important ones. And it's like, okay, they're all flaming. So cool. All right, let me come in here and like throw some extra in there, just because I still don't want those ones to dwindle out, because I believe that those people also don't want it to fully dwindle out. They just don't have the energy to keep it, blazing. And I don't have that type of energy or commitment to keep it blazing by pulling in their work too, because it's not as rewarding to me as the ones over here in my intimate garden. And so I think that that's like a really big thing, like for me, like being a 9, like knowing Stephanie as a sexual 5, I feel like that's really like worked out because I compared Stephanie to, not in a creep way or anything, but like I believe that Joe from the show You is a sexual 5 and a really great example of one on an exaggerated level, of course. Not all sexual 5 are killers and stalkers and everything. Well, they could be in their own ways, the stalking part. but yeah, I think that because like I'm a 9 who like often feels like, oh yeah, like I'm paying attention to everyone else, and I'm really like trying to like make sure I'm keeping these fires aflame, like I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that. But man, it kind of sucks. Like I really don't feel like people want to keep it as like passionately burning as I do, or it's almost like pulling teeth to try and get them to do that. So I'll just pull their weight, it's nothing, I'll just do it. But then like meeting someone like Stephanie, sexual 5, where they're the 5 that is like the most like intense and trying to like, foster a relationship with that one-on-one and like keeping that fire like burning kind of thing. I felt an energy from her where it's like, wow, like she, again, like I've not felt once so far, even like an ounce of like, dang, this is a lot of work. It's like, I've always felt like, wow, like I just sent her a whole, article, or like, I just sent her like all these pages. I just sent her like a long voice text to listen to or whatever. And she's on it. And not only that, but then she throws it right back to me. And I'm just as happy to like check it out. Like she sent me like 2 different videos recently. One of them was 2 hours long. And she like, from your experiences, you've had people where it's like, like, oh, I know that you're interested in this. Here you are. Like, like this is a 2-hour long video, whatever. 2 hours, like, and it's just like, all right. Whereas for me, like I could honestly say, like complete honestly say that when you sent me that type of content, when you like sent me like, no matter how long the video is, no matter how long the article was, when you'd say something like, yo, I was thinking about you when I read this or whatever, I wanted to discuss this with you. To me, that is firewood. That is like, whoa, like you actually like want to engage with me. And like, why would I be upset? Like, oh, this is 2 hours long. Wow. That just means that there's going to be a lot of firewood to gather here to keep us, keep this flame burning even longer. That's not work. This is fun. This is great. Like we're going to glean so much from this, and we're going to learn so much from this dynamic. And wow, like it's just been like a really cool friendship in that sense, because I think that's probably maybe what you were like talking about, like, you know, that sexual five nature of like that intense focus on this one person at a time and being able to like really like learn them and everything. I feel like that goes very well with like me as a social nine, and sexual is my second, which the sexual nine is kind of like the same way, where they lose their identity in their romantic partner or in their close friend dynamics. And so that being like my secondary instinct, not that I've lost my identity in Stephanie or even in Jamila, my romantic partner, but I've seen that like with me and Stephanie's dynamic, because she keeps such a focus on my identity and everything, it's like I can't even lose myself, because in this process of merging, I still have a hold on who I am as me. I didn't have to like shrink anything about me, because she continues to shine a spotlight on it and say like, yo, that's beautiful. It's like, oh, really? I was just about to narcotize that. Like, I was just about to like put that part of me to sleep. And I really like that, once again, like about our dynamic. But this is, of course, not to say that like, oh, you know, so if you guys are not a 9 and a 5, then you're screwed. Or even like with me and Jamila, like, you know, FE dom versus FI dominant. It's kind of like a similar dynamic where it's like, I haven't lost myself in the process of like getting close to her and everything, because she also like pays such a good attention like to me as her partner and everything. But again, kind of like what I've been like on my Instagram and my YouTube recently, we praise romantic relationships like so highly that we fail to like we really like undervalue platonic ones. And so I've just really been wanting to like shine light on platonic dynamics. And so my recent video that I posted with David on humans, that was one where me and David really went in on this topic. And I posted, you know, another video, you know, with me and Chelsea Marie, where we're talking about the difference between romantic and platonic relationships. And then I also talked about, you know, like the Greek love languages and stuff like that, like how there's different forms of love, you know, and like it's just really important to like have this nuanced understanding of interpersonal dynamics. And so all that to say though, like that to me, like I think that's a really cool thing that Stephanie and I like have. And I want to encourage people to check out your dynamics. Like, look at yourself before you look at the other people involved in your dynamics. Like, am I doing enough to take care of this child? Am I doing the work to put in the firewood for this fire? Do I even care enough to put the firewood in this fire? Then you can start asking questions like, is the other person doing the work? Does the other person even care enough? You can talk to that person and see like, hey, so I've noticed this about our friendship or whatever, like, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then you can start to see from there how much firewood you should put there, how much energy you should put there, how much water you should give that plant, how much fruit is that plant going to give you. Because if you're giving all of this water but you're not getting fruit back, maybe it's time to move over to somewhere else where you'll probably get more fruit that'll replenish you more. And so yeah, that's what I have to say on that. Did you want to tag anything?
Yeah, just briefly, going back to the 9-5 Enneagram types, I think something that's been really helpful for me is to see you in your, I guess, normal MO as a 9, as a social 9, like putting a lot of energy out there. I've kind of learned to fine tune my approach, because in the past I've been very much like almost hyper aware and sensitive to how much energy both parties are putting in. And if I notice that I'm putting in more energy, I would quickly retract to match the other person's energy. And what I would find happening is that the fire would be about to go out and the other person either, like you said, doesn't notice or doesn't care, and then I wouldn't be I would have lost communication with this person. Now, were they to reach out to me like 2 years later, I'd always be there, and like I don't hold grudges or anything like that. But what I've been focusing on doing now and kind of fine-tuning in my approach is continuing, even if I notice that the energy is being thrown off balance and maybe I'm the one putting in more, then to still keep putting firewood, but maybe less, or throwing twigs or something.
Nice. Yeah.
It going, but I also kind of detach myself a little bit. I don't know if that's a 5 thing. I don't know, but also like I'll continue. For example, with the videos, like yes, I've had many people in the past where I share a video and they'd be like, they'd start tearing it apart, like, oh, it's too long, and therefore not watching it. Or like I know that they're not watching it because it never comes up again. Or if I ask, they're like, oh, I never got to it. Or they'll say, like, they'll watch it and they'll critique like something about the way the person talks, like something ridiculous like that. Like, but now my approach has been more like, if I think the person could have an interest in the video, I'm not going to send you something that you have absolutely no interest in, because that's
of course
fine. But if I think you're going to benefit from it, or that it might be of interest to you, I'll share it. And whether you watch it or not, I kind of detach myself from that. But I throw it there because it could be a potential spark later on down the line. And I'm putting in energy, but it's not all of my energy. Like, I'm not attaching emotional energy to it. Like, we're going to talk about this in the future. I'm not worrying about it. It's just like, here's a little something. If you want to, take it, and we can talk about it later. If not, it's all good.
It's like dynamite, maybe, that they can choose to set a flame to whenever they want, and they may never set flame to it.
Yeah, maybe like a stick, like a stick that's ablaze, and like I'll give it to them, and then they can throw it in if they want. If not, then whatever. And I don't just mean with videos, like other things too. Like I might ask a deeper question, and they can choose to go and dive into that or not. But I did my part, and if you choose to throw it in there, then like, cool, let's keep throwing little sticks in and see how much bigger we can get the fire. If not, then it's all good. I'll go to my other fires, and I'll come back tomorrow with a little twig or some, not every day, but like I'm continuing to put some level of energy in there so that it doesn't die out completely. And of course, I'm not doing this for everyone. I'm doing it for the people that when I start seeing it slip up, or I give them their space, because I'm also very sensitive to that. I know people sometimes are busy, sometimes they're going through something difficult and they don't feel like sharing. So you come back at a later time and see, like, obviously this person for months has been like, stay back kind of thing, then yeah, I'm gonna respect that. And it's there's like a healthy level of detachment, I feel, whereas in the past I would be like really emotionally invested, like sitting there by the fire waiting for something to come up, and then being really disappointed when it doesn't. So it's kind of like finding the middle ground between both of our approaches in the past. I think it's been a little bit different for each of us. Like, you also taking a step back, and for the relationships that warrant that, and then me kind of putting a little bit more in, but with a certain sense of detachment. So it's been really cool to, like, I guess, learn from one another, or at least me kind of taking that on from you in my own way.
I've definitely been like picking up from that with you too. Like, I just kind of like what I just explained, like, and it's real. I really like that you also emphasize, like, this isn't for like everyone. Like, again, life happens, so it's like we're not here like demanding people to constantly be like, like, we understand that life happens and things start to dwindle, but you can usually tell the people who still generally want the fire burning versus those who really don't care to. And so with us, it's like, I know, like, for me, like, there are fires that, I also like, like bring little like twigs here and there, because it's like, again, like I see that it's dwindling, yes, but I feel like you do still want this to flame to an extent. And so I will continue to like help it out. And if there ever comes a point where I feel like the person now has more time or now has more value for the fire or both or whatever, then I will be like, yeah, sure. And then we can start trying to get it like, like really getting it up again, like it's not too late to do that. Some of them maybe even have burned out, and it's like, sure, that might be a little bit harder, but if they really want it, I'm down, like as long as I know that like that's what you actually want to do and you're like dedicated and you're committed, I don't mind like, getting the firewood for that. But yeah, I've definitely started like, I guess, becoming like more like how you've been in the past, where it's like, yeah, it's like for me, it's like, wow, I actually have found people that appreciate me. So why
Yeah.
am why would I use, I have a whole bunch of logs right here. Why would I throw it over there? Because in the past when I've thrown it over there, then I just saw you like filing your nails and you didn't, you're like, oh, thanks for putting some more fire in there, it's just like, whereas with these other ones, I see that we're both like walking in. It's like Stephanie, like she's walking in with her logs, and it's like, so I feel like, oh man, like it's every time I see that, it's like, wow, like she's really trying. Like she really wants to keep this going. Like that's cool. So this is not being done in vain. So of course I'm gonna want to throw them in there too. But yeah, the twigs, I'm still gonna be tossing them into the other ones. And it's not as a 9, even I know the easy thing to go to is like passive aggressiveness. I know when I'm being passive aggressive, and that's not one of those times. Me throwing twigs into our dynamic is not the passive aggressiveness. Maybe if I like came and urinated on it, that'd be a little something. I don't know. Oh man, maybe I should edit that part out. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously though, like when I'm like tossing twigs into that dynamic, that's like, that's, if anything, that's me still showing that I care. But at the end of the day, it's like you have to recognize, which a lot of people I feel like they probably don't, because they've overestimated my energy. Um, and I've had people that come and talk to me about this. Like I told you about my ESFP friend who got upset with me. Like, you don't check on me as much anymore. You don't do this, and called me selfish because I I have been doing this and I have not been putting as much firewood into our thing. And I like pointed out like all of the different times where I've put firewood in, and she hasn't really like, helped in that sense. And, but again, I just like you, I didn't hold a grudge, but I still did like put a twig in there, like here and there. And then she did want to like, try to like make it like a really huge fire. And I gave her the opportunity. But after about 2 weeks, she realized like, dang, this is a lot of work and we're just not cut out for this. And there's nothing wrong with that. We keep our fire small. Shoot, I might even text her tonight just to throw in some twigs in there now that I'm reminded of her. But like, yeah, we keep our fire small, and it's like, oh, hey, how you doing? Oh, you still doing well with school and everything? Like, oh, okay, that's what's up. Cool, whatever, back and forth. All right, well, see you again soon, whenever. And that's just that, like, like, but me throwing those twigs in there, that's again, like, it's not like passive aggressiveness. It's like, we don't, I didn't burn that bridge. I'm not trying to burn bridges over here. I'm just trying to maintain certain ones to an extent that most people, like, if people are not going to be walking back and forth, so many analogies. If not many people are going to be walking back and forth on this bridge, then I don't really think that I'd have to like spend too much time trying to like maintain that one, spend a lot of like money and energy on that. I can just come and check on it like every now and then, but it's like a ghost town a little bit over in that area. So it's like, well, why do I have to keep it up? Like, why do I have to like maintain it so heavily? We're not going to burn it, but whatever. Whereas with these other ones, it's like, oh, people are like, we're always moving back and forth on this bridge. So I have to make sure that it's sturdy. I have to check on it every day. I have to like keep an eye on it, maintain it, because it's often and frequently being used. So I think that this is a really good way on people being able to learn how to like manage their energy and their social dynamics. I was hanging out with some coworkers once, like a few weeks ago, and as we're like hanging out and everything, then this ESFP girl, it's always the ESFPs, but this ESFP girl was like with me. She was she like as everyone was talking, like I was just chilling, and then she said something like, "My social radar has officially just burned out," kind of thing. And she said something to me like, I know that I'm a fairly extroverted person, which I was grateful that she said that, because a lot of extroverts swear they're introverts, and it's just like, you don't get it. Like, no, every extrovert needs their alone time. Every extrovert gets burned out, whatever. But yeah, she said like, I'm a fairly extroverted person. I get that. But I realize like more and more like how easy it is for my social energy to like deplete. And for me, what I ended up saying was, I ended up telling her, I told her that I'm similar, but what I've learned is how to sustain my energy. And analogies just always come to mind. It's just an image that always comes to mind. Like I told her, I see it kind of like icing, like, you know, those like icing things that you squirt or whatever. I see all of my energy in that, and I squirt when it's like, you know, like necessary, you know, and then if this cupcake or whatever doesn't need it, like in that social moment, if that topic of conversation that's on the table right now doesn't need my energy, then I'm going to reserve my energy for the next topic. I'm going to reserve my energy. I'm sustaining my energy throughout the day constantly, rather than like throwing in and forcing myself to speak on every single thing as she was trying to do. And that's why it looks like, well, that's why you burned out so quickly. It's not because you're more introverted than I am. It's because you still need to, I didn't tell her all of this part, because that would have been unnecessary. But it's like, if she was a client of mine, you know, I'd tell her like, yeah, you need to learn how to better manage your energy, you know, so that it can be sustained throughout the day. And I think that's like one of the things that I've really been learning and like picking up on. And I feel like a lot of people, introverts and extroverts, like they could like really like learn from that. A common thing that we see online is like ENFPs are like the most extroverted introverts. Are the most introverted extroverts. And I think that, again, it all depends on what you mean by extroverted. I mean, like what you mean by like introverted. Like if they are constantly like, you know, like when I see personally, in my experience, when I see ENFPs extroverting, they're much higher level of energy than ENFJs. And so they're like blasting a whole bunch of that energy out. And of course, since they blasted so much out, then it's like, whew, I'm burned out, man, I just need some alone time. And then they completely retreat. And it's like, does that really mean that you're more introverted, or did you just really burn through all of the energy that you had that much more quickly? So now you have to go and restock that much more dramatically. And this, of course, isn't like me coming for every ENFP out there, but like that's just kind of like what I've like noticed. And I think that a bigger thing is more of like, how are you sustaining that energy? How are you managing that energy throughout the day? What are you investing that energy into? And once you start thinking intentionally in these kinds of ways, I feel like, I know for me, it just does so much wonders. And even for you too, I know that as well, because like you with energy management is like, you're like a goddess at that. like what time is it? Oh, it's almost your bedtime.
No, I have to though. But I've had really bad periods in my life where like all of my energy management has gone out the window, and I've literally gone for months on like 2%, and I felt miserable. So now I know that it has to be a priority. And now it's easy because I live alone, so I can get all the alone time I need. So whenever I do go out, I'm like really charged up and ready to give. But yeah, I have to have like a very specific and regular routine. But like that routine is, yeah, it's very specific to certain things that I need to keep me high energy and like high functioning, not only physically, but also like mentally / spiritually. So that when I do engage in my little dances around the bonfires, like I can be out there ready to party and like give all my energy. And yeah, it's a difficult balance, because you also as an extrovert get energy from connecting with other people. So it's really hard to like unplug yourself from that other person, especially as like a sexual 5. It's like if somebody is matching my energy and the depth that I want to go, it's really hard to pull me away. Like I lose sense of time, of my physical needs. Like I'll hear a little voice there, but I'm just like, okay, later, and going. And it's like this. I'm actually a little sleepy right now, but like I could go until the crack of dawn.
True.
And I'll like drinking some water or something to try to stay awake. But it's just that fulfilling and satisfying. But I know that the next day I'm going to crash and I'm going to need like 2 days to recover. So I try not to get it that way, because that's going to affect like, oh, what if I have to tend to some fires in the next 2 days, but now my energy is really low. I'm not going to be a very nice person. Like I'm going to try to be, but it's going to take a lot of work. So yeah, it's really a fine balance that I have to strike. And I feel like that is work. Like it's not work in the sense that I actually enjoy having like a little routine and things that I do to stay 100% for myself and for everyone else, so that I can give. But it becomes work when I feel like, damn, I really want to keep going, but my body has needs, or my mind has needs, and I have to tend to them if I want to be at my best.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it's and also, and that's like my personal nightly routine. But yeah, that also comes into play with how you give your energy to your different relationships as well. Because I think you can start to get drained again if we go back to the example where you're the person constantly putting, and like it's not being reciprocated or appreciated or whatever the case may be. Then it's like, okay, I have to pull back some of this energy, or at least divest emotionally and like put my little twigs, and invest maybe more energy in other areas, or sometimes in yourself with your self-care. Like it depends. So be really aware of those things though.
Yeah, for sure. And especially even as a 5, like I know that the I can't remember the name for it right now, but like the thing for the 5 is like where you hoard more for yourself kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought. I wrote that down, avarice, but I was like, maybe that's not the right word. But yeah, like, it's like, okay, you always feel like you're holding on to more than what you need, which I know that growing up, like my best friend David, who is an INFJ, so he's INFJ self-preservation 5. I always noticed that like with him, like he really does seem to like hold on to more than what he needs. And like it's like no, I need to like keep this kind of thing. Like he's making sure that he's good in a way. He's gotten a lot better with that as he's like grown more and like into his FE and all of that. But like it seemed like he really like to hoard his energy in a manner. I'm wondering, like for you, being a sexual 5 and FE dominant at that, maybe that's some kind of again, like another contradiction in a way, where it's like I can't even, like, sometimes I'm hoarding my energy, which I just called you like an energy goddess, you know, because like you really just like, you do well, like when you're like, all right, like we'll be texting, it's like, I need to go to sleep. And like, and we knew this like from jump, like, you know, like you really do well with like managing your energy. Like we talk like certain time each night, it seems. But then you'll have like, and you'll like even put your phone on like airplane mode and like stuff like that, because like you're really like focusing on like managing that energy throughout the day. So, and you track like, you know, how like your sleep, like, you know, how many hours of sleep that you get, like you really get into all of the nitty gritties of that. But then we go the complete opposite, where it's like it's like 2:30 a.m. and I'm like, dang, this girl is still texting. And I'm okay with it. but it's like, dang, like you're really overextending.
Yeah.
I'm like, yo, you want to go to sleep, Stephanie?
Yeah, it's funny because back in the day when I thought I was an INFP, I would notice I would get so much energy from hanging out with certain people. Like, I had a little group of intuitive friends. Most of my life I've had sensor friends, but some years ago I met a group of intuitives, and I just wanted to hang out with them all the time. And so there was one summer where we were hanging out all the time, but I wasn't making enough alone time and for myself. And I started like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's almost like you become irritable, or I'm irritable. And I'm like, sometimes people will become annoying to me. And that's happened throughout my whole life. That's why I was an introvert, because if I hang out with someone too much, and I don't mean in dynamics where I get, my bad, my phone's gonna die soon. I might have to pause it to get my charger, but I don't mean in dynamics where they're super fulfilling. Like, I haven't had too many like that, but I could go for a long time in a dynamic that's like really, really fulfilling. Of course, I have physical needs. Like if I'm skimping on sleep, I'm gonna feel that, and I might not become irritable, but I'm gonna be like less energetic, physically energetic. But in the past, like even before this group of intuitives, I would start to, like in high school, I had this very small group of friends, and I would start to be annoyed by them and almost like temporarily not like them. I didn't understand why at the time. I would just be like, oh, this person's so annoying. Like, why do they keep talking about that? And it was because I wasn't having enough, like, okay, I was never a person that loved to hang out a ton with people after school. So I always had that free time. But in school, like, if you have a lot of classes with people and you're constantly talking to them between class and after school and before school, like for me, that felt like a lot, especially when, for me, not even knowing it then, but we were connecting on such a surface level that it was just like, but then when I met this group of friends, I was like, whoa, we have so much in common, this, that, and the other. But it still happened where, like, it wasn't that I didn't like them, but I don't know, something felt off. And now in hindsight, at the time I started like learning that about myself, it was that I really loved connecting with people, but I do have to manage it and balance it with sufficient alone time. Like where I'm just doing something by myself all day, like outside, something out in the world, but it's just me. And then probably the next day I'll be good to go.
Yeah.
So now living alone, it's perfect because I carve out that time every single day, so I could extrovert every single day for a certain period of time and be fine. So it's about learning.
Your home is like your little 5 castle palace.
Yeah. It's like, I call it like my oasis or sanctuary, because it's like, feels like very sacred, and like I don't know, people in here, and yeah, like after dinner, it just turns into like self-care or like recharge mode. You know, I'm just here doing a bunch of different things, but they're like chill things. And I can still be connecting with people. Like you and I are talking during that time, but it's still like me alone. So that's really nice. That's why I oftentimes put my phone on airplane mode. Like I do love talking to people. I used to hate talking to people on the phone.
Yeah, me too. I kind of still do, to be honest. But you're really fun to have to talk on the phone, and
Yeah,
it's
I really
immense.
like it. It's because I didn't realize that I was having conversations with people that I didn't really connect with. Like we were having a lot of. I don't really know anything about what you're talking about, or I don't really honestly care. Like I want to connect with you, but like I don't have a lot to offer when you know we have such a gap in like our either people are. So yeah, but after finding people that like I really connect to, I could talk. Like,
Yeah. And that was one of the things you said in your profiling session too. It's like, yeah, you know, like when I asked you the flow questions, like, I just love to talk. Just love to really like, have like deep conversation. Like,
yeah.
I can go on forever. And I was like, really?
Yeah, if it's with the right person, like the right person. But I still know that's not something I want to be doing every single day. So I do keep my phone on like airplane mode with just the Wi-Fi, so I can still keep getting text messages. But every now and then I'll turn it on. I don't get many phone calls to begin with, so it's not like I'm blocking phone calls left and right. But
yeah, and I keep my phone on do not disturb. So like even like as it's been sitting here like right now, I don't know who maybe has texted me since we've been on this call. I don't know if anyone has called me. Even I've changed my voicemail recently to say, hey, if you called me, you probably have to call again if it's an emergency, and then your phone call actually go through, or you gotta text me and I'll probably, you know, but yeah, those unexpected phone calls, I hate those unless if it's an emergency. And yeah, I guess like that's my way of like airplane mode, because then it's like that buzzing from the text, like I don't get that. Like my phone can say dormant. I'm in control of when I'm checking when I have a text message kind of thing. So yeah, no, I definitely get that.
yeah, I've done that for my messages as well. With yours, because it's on a different app, and we kind of like have this designated time.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'll see something come in, so yours will pop up, but sometimes I'll see it come in, and like I'll read the preview of the message if I have time, and if it's like something quick that I know I can reply to in the moment, I will. But if it's something that like I need to put more energy into, I'll leave it for the evening.
Yeah.
But we always know we have this designated time, so it's like it's always gonna get offended too. So
yeah, our expectations of our dynamic is very, even without having to say it, we just kind of again like understood the ebb and flow of it. And even as it continues to evolve, even in the future, like where I don't know if we do have conflict, like I think that we've made jokes about like, oh wow, we're having a conflict, you know, like in the future, like if we do have one, then it's like, oh wow, this is an opportunity to dissect this. And we're like such meta freaks, like like we just like look at our dynamic and we're just like piecing it like together and like guinea pigs for each other in a way. But this is all for you guys, and once again, like, you know, it's really cool that as we continue to grow in our dynamic, then we're taking what we create here and then we're putting it out there into the world. And so this is only like the first video of I don't know how many. Maybe it'll only be the only one. You know, I don't know, but maybe a few months from now, maybe a couple of years from now, like, you know, Stephanie and I'll come back together. Like maybe even when we meet in person, you know, again, and we like hang out. Then like we might have like some shorter videos that like, you know, come out. It's like, oh, so this is something new that we've learned in our dynamic that might be able to help you guys out and stuff. But Yeah, I know that you said that your phone is dying, but on top of that, I feel like you've kind of like gotten through most of, if not everything, what we wanted to like say. But was there anything else that you wanted to like add on before we start like wrapping up?
I'm trying to think if there's any other like takeaway things, but we might have covered them. Like we covered the intimacy, sharing different aspects of ourselves. We covered the energy management, sharing of different things, and like wanting to dive into those things.
Yeah. Also,
But I can't think of any right now.
also, I don't know if we maybe have already touched on this, but also like Clay had mentioned how in one of his videos he made friends with someone else who they had like a really, really great dynamic, and then he tried to like replicate that in all of his other dynamics and stuff. And he realized like that's these dynamics are just not built for that. And so I think that one thing that we have also learned is like we have like something like very unique and like special, and we don't expect our other dynamics to like live up to that. They probably can, and we would love for that, you know. It's not like, oh, you know, I think we both talked about before, like I'm not the type to be like, oh, so you met someone else who, you know, has this type of connection like you do, like with me or whatever. Like we want to breed more of these dynamics with other people,
Yeah.
and find more of our tribe in that sense. But at the end of the day, like we understand that the reality of the situation is that most people are not like that, and that's okay because at least we have found a dynamic where that is. So you get fed as much as you can from this. That way, when you go over to your other dynamics, you can appreciate those for what they are, for what they bring to the table. And you won't have this kind of like resentment for those dynamics too. So now you can even be more present with, not all sensors are like quote unquote unable to like connect on like a deep level, but like, you know, like kind of like what you were just saying, like, you know, like now you, if you had to, like you could hang out with those sensor friends and you'd be like just fine and be able to meet them where they are, because it's like I'm getting satisfied in the places that I need to be satisfied in from this other dynamic. And so I can appreciate the others for what they are. And that's another blessing that I think that comes with. But we shouldn't like devalue our dynamics that are not the type that we have, kind of thing. And I think that's also like another important note to just throw in there.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the energy management thing, and I wasn't trying to talk smack about sensors because I actually really appreciate them now, and I've had some deep conversations with sensors, like, and I've been able to appreciate the sensors that I've had, like that group of high school friends. I'm still friends with them, and we don't communicate often, but when we do, like you know, I haven't been trying to replicate my dynamic that I have with you or like any deeper friendships I have, but I will throw in some flaming sticks, some like deeper things here and there, and like it turns out really well. You know, it may not go on for days,
Right.
or whatever, but in that moment, like you're deepening your connection to the person, and it like, so that's what I was kind of referring to as well when I said that I was kind of learning from your social 9 thing, that like normally in the past, right, with this group of people, like, oh, I haven't heard from them in months, like I'll say hi and I'll leave it at that, and like we'll say hi, oh, what have you done, but now I'm like, okay, I'm gonna ask a deeper question, or I'm gonna mention this or share this, and like I'll have that detached perspective where like they can answer however I want. It's not going to change how I feel about them or whatever. And it's gone really well. So I've been surprised by a lot of interactions I've had with people, especially sensors lately. It's just you have to create that space to allow for it to happen. Like we were talking about with the nuanced nudity thing.
Yeah.
I'm not putting up a sign like, show me your booty.
Yeah.
Just, you know, I'm saying like, hey, you want to try on this off the shoulder shirt or something?
Right. Exactly.
Show me cool. If not, all good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised by taking on that more detached but more proactive approach without being like overbearing either. Like I think I've had some dynamics in the past where I'm like, I want to connect with you, we must, and I've come at it with not that kind of energy, like we're gonna do this now, but sort of like being a little bit demanding or getting upset when I haven't gotten to the level that I would have liked. So yes, the learning process.
Yeah, for sure. I really like how we've been growing in that dynamic, like a lot, for real. And yeah, and you've even like, I don't remember like how much, but Jamila and you have like talked a lot, like, well, at least at the meetup. Because I remember after our profiling session, I told her like, yeah, you know, I just profiled Stephanie and she ended up being ENFJ. And Jamila's like, really? And then she also actually mentioned like, actually, I think I can actually see it too. Like, I'm a little bit surprised, but at the same time, like, she mentioned like, not that this means that only ENFJs are, but she said that she remembered you saying like how like you're a teacher, and then so like that was like kind of like something that I was like, oh yeah, so that I could see that. But yeah, like Jamila's a censor, and I know that you guys had like some back and forth. I feel like she probably even talked to you more at the meetup than maybe even I did, because I was doing a whole bunch, or maybe it was Tanisha.
We didn't talk a ton. We did exchange a few messages through Facebook Messenger, whatever it's called. So we picked up on it from there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mentioned to you I had a teaching assistant that was ISFP as well, and like I loved her. We had such good conversations. Several about MBTI. That's how I discovered that she was an ISFP, and sometimes I would be surprised, like, whoa, I can go into some cool rabbit holes.
Yeah, they sneak up on you. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I just wanted to say to everyone for watching right now, thanks so much. And if you're watching this like during the live chat and everything, thanks for like tuning in for the premiere of this video. If you're watching post stream, then be sure to leave comments, questions, concerns. Stephanie's phone's about to die, so this is literally like just in time. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching, keeping up, and I guess done.